Look at all that on my face. That is hype. Oh my gosh. So, guys, I just finished watching season one of Game of Thrones. This is my first time ever, and oh my god, that was amazing. I can see all the hype. I totally get it. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Yeah, that was quite something, I have to say. That was not what I expected. I mean, I expected awesomeness, but I didn't expect that level. And I just want to say right off the bat, what really got me hooked was there's so many different storylines and characters and subplots and arcs and everything. And it's at first it's hard to keep track of everything, but seeing all these journeys that seem unrelated, and then seeing the layers of where they connect, why this is important, and starting to figure out like especially in episode one where we meet these new characters and we're like, who are these people? Or even in the opening scene where it doesn't really make sense why they showed that opening scene, like it was just completely unrelated from the rest of season one. And then you start to hear things and you're like, okay, maybe this will be important. And as you progress, because I am in season two now, you start to see, oh yeah, that makes sense why they showed that. But there's a lot of that in this first season here that made it so amazing. Like examples being, Daenerys and the Targaryen story. Like when you meet the Targaryens, you're like, who are these people? And the Dothraki come in, and you're like, what home are they trying to reclaim? What are they? Where are they trying to go? And then you start to realize, oh, that makes sense. They're trying to claim the Iron Throne, the throne that the king from the beginning sits on, and it totally makes sense. Everything just kind of lines up, and you start to see the pieces, and you start to be like, okay. And one thing that's interesting too is they have so many interesting characters on each side. Like you have the Targaryens. Daenerys is an interesting character, but then you also have the Baratheons and the Starks and the Lannisters. Even the Lannisters being evil, and I think all of us sit at our screen being like, oh, I hate this character, I hate Cersei, or I hate Jamie, but everyone loves Tyrion because Tyrion's a likable dude for the most part. He does do some bad things. He's not the most perfect human being ever, but he's someone that you can cheer for because you understand his story, you understand his plight. He's a smaller dude, he's an imp, he's a dwarf, a midget, whatever you want to call him, and he doesn't like being called that. But you understand, life's going to be a little more difficult for him being in such a noble family and in such a rich and powerful family, maybe the most rich and powerful in Westeros. It makes a lot of sense, a character like that. And I think he was one of my favorite characters in the whole thing. I think Jon Snow's got to be a favorite character right off the bat. Really badass guy, just really kind of the perfect sort of main character, because I do get the vibes that he's sort of the main character of this show. He's definitely the most well known. Like before I started watching, I knew there was Peter Dinklage, who was one of my favorite actors growing up in some of my favorite childhood movies like Elf and Underdog. I knew Peter Dinklage was in this. I knew there was a blonde girl. I knew there was dragons somewhere in this series, and then I heard the name Jon Snow, and the guy who played Boromir, I knew he did something in this too. I think he said winter is coming, and of course he does say winter is coming because that is the Starks' little saying, their little house motto. But I think Jon Snow is kind of the main character, and if so, he's a great main character to have for this series. Really likable guy, really pure. You do see, there's the cracks of impurity there, though, definitely. Could go anyway with that character, but I really like him, and I think he fits in really well with the Night's Watch, which I think is a great little arc in there. I think my favorite part of the series so far is definitely just really the entirety of the Stark family's arcs. Especially the really sad story of Ned, being executed. Such a noble man. Questionable at the beginning, actually. He wasn't the most likable guy, with the initial execution, but as it went on, I think he was one of the most likable characters in the whole thing because he was a good guy, who's honorable, cared about his family, fairly relatable. He was just a pure man, and the execution was definitely one of the most brutal and emotional things I've ever seen in film, TV, whatever. It was definitely startling, shocking, horrifying, epic. I think we all kind of knew it was coming. It was building up to that moment, because Sean Bean dies and everything, but I was, my jaw was on the ground. That was one of the few spoilers that I had spoiled for me. I knew he died, and I just kind of felt it, and I knew it was coming. And, every episode I was leading up to it, I'm like, it's going to be next episode, and then when it happened, I was like, wow, was not ready for this at all. So, as I mentioned before, some of my favorite characters: Tyrion, Ned, Jon Snow. One of my favorite characters in the whole series. And I still am interested. I'm halfway through the second season, but right now I'm really liking Littlefinger, Peter Baelish, as a villain in particular. I think this show has some really good villains. There are some really interesting villains in this show so far. And Peter Baelish, someone that you don't like at first, but damn, is he a clever guy? Is he on top of things? He is a relatable villain, surprisingly. He's the kind of villain that I'd want to be in anything. He's really on top of things. He's smart. He's always one step ahead. He puts himself into a position, and this is kind of a weird comparison, but as someone who watches Survivor, the show, the reality show, I know all about putting yourself in that position to be able to survive. Put yourself into an alliance or whatever. And he's someone that does that. He keeps putting himself in the position of power and is able to stay on relatively good terms with each house. And then of course he betrays Ned. But obviously he's had that grudge against Ned, and a lot of his motivations are for Catelyn, his interest in her, and that's something that's definitely very interesting to think about, is that a lot of it stems from his relationship and interest in Lady Stark, and that's his motivation. So, when he says that the smartest decision he made was not trusting him, it's like, I think this guy's going to be evil. I think he could do something bad. But it makes sense because of their prior relationship and possible interest in each other and his basically obsession with her. It's obvious that he's clearly obsessed with her, and that's his main motivation, apart from staying alive and staying in a position of power. It's his interest in Catelyn. I think he's a really well written and acted character too, and that's another thing. The acting is really good. Like, the acting is sensational from a lot of the characters. Daenerys, her actress is amazing. Jon Snow's actor is amazing. Peter Dinklage is probably the best actor in the whole thing. He's done an incredible job. He was the breakout star of the whole thing, and everyone's a big fan of him. But the acting is actually incredible. Joffrey's actor, I think part of the reason why the villains are so detestable and the heroes are so likable is because they're acted so well. Sansa's actress is incredible, and the young actors, the child actors, usually that's a problem in shows, is child actors are not very good because a lot of times they don't even understand what's going on, but even if they do, they don't have as much experience and expertise at acting. But the young actors in this are really solid for young actors as well. The effects are pretty good overall too. I really like the effects, but I don't think that's something that takes away from it, but that's okay because there's good effects. But it's not something that's like a deal breaker for me because it's a TV show. The budget's not going to be as high, but this ended up being the highest budget TV show of all time. But season 1 overall was really good. We learned a lot of great stories, a lot of great arcs. Really made me curious for where it's going to go. I'm halfway through season 2, and season 2 is definitely a great continuation of it. But season 1, dang, I don't know if I can really give it a score because it's a TV show. It's hard to give scores to seasons because I just really hooked and interested in love with this show so far. And I think it's one of the greatest things I've ever watched, honestly, is season 1. And apparently it gets better. So let's see from there. But guys, thank you for watching this video. Subscribe if you're interested in more Game of Thrones content as well as music reviews, everything like that. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys all later. Bye, everybody.